All right. Thank you, John. Excellent talk, as always. Our next speaker is going to be Dirk Hohndel. Dirk is a longtime contributor and developer. He's been contributing to Linux for a while. Wait a minute. I didn't just call Dirk old. And before we were coming up here, he mentioned that he's going for a black belt test in a few weeks. So he is also young, good-looking, and please don't kick me because I think it's going to hurt. Anyways, Dirk works in the Software and Services group at Intel, the Open Source Technology Center. He's responsible for guiding their engagements in open source. And so this afternoon, he's going to be talking a little bit about Intel's approach to open source and also about mobile web and how they're advancing HTML5 technologies and other web technologies through their work in WebKit, through graphics, W3C API definition, and of course the importance of the open web platform. So welcome, Dirk.
I won't need that. As some of you know, I have this very bad habit of speaking without slides, which is also very useful because you can respond a little more quickly to what the speakers before you have said. I want to apologize if I'm a little off my game. I've been following for the last 2 hours quite diligently what happened in Boston. I'm not sure if everyone has heard yet that bombs exploded at the Boston Marathon with people dead and lots of runners injured. And I've run a few marathons myself in the past. I actually know people who ran Boston this year. As far as I can tell, they're all safe. But it certainly is something that does affect me a little bit. It's quite upsetting. Having said that, let's try to go back to the actual topic today, giving a keynote about technology, which seems a little trivial right now. As Brian said, I've been around open source for a long time, long before it was called open source. I've been doing Linux for 21.5 years, and that's just not a good thing to say because it does mean I'm old. But the good news is many people here in the room have gotten old together with me. It's not just me who's getting old. You're welcome. My absolute pleasure. It's really hard. And this is one of the things that is so special about Collab, the Collab Summit, which is one of my favorite conferences to go to. It's really hard on the first day of keynotes to be like the 7th speaker, because all the things that the others have said already are either things that I wanted to say, or are things that I have smart comments on, and I'm afraid that if I try to do this now, I'm going to completely derail my own talk. So one thing that I wanted to say about Jim's presentation this morning, if I have 8-year-old twin girls, if I put up a picture of Linus Torvalds and both of my girls and said they were equally adorable, I would rather not come home to my wife. So, Jim, I know you're hiding in your room right now, but it's not going to help. And the other thing is, I absolutely envy the gentleman from Jaguar. Because when I tell people, oh, I'll get you an SDV, which is what we call a software development vehicle, it doesn't have the same ring as when the Jaguar guy says that. That's just awesome. So John said a few very interesting things about the way open source and the Linux community in particular work. And I give talks like this at different kind of events, and more in a corporate setting, more to business people, sometimes inside Intel. And usually I start out with the, depending on the audience, 10 to 90 minutes on why open source is a good idea. I decided for this audience today, maybe I'll skip that part. But one of the things that I keep getting asked, and that I do want to talk about, is this question of why is open source good for a company like Intel? Why does Intel invest so much in this? And it was very nice of John to put the graphic on with the contribution charts, the fever graphs, or whatever you call them, of how insanely involved different companies are. Because, yes, we do a lot on Linux, and it's quite obvious. And oh, by the way, if you are part of this 11% group, we'll be happy to hire you, because we still have a lot of open jobs. Please come to our booth. But as John said, most everyone in this group is there because they don't want to be hired. So why is a company like Intel so engaged? I mean, we make our money with hardware. We do chips, right? We are actually a very big software company, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means later. But as a hardware company, as an IT company, as a company that revolves around this idea that people use the things that they buy from us to then compute on them, to us this idea of innovation is literally at the core of everything that we do. And this beautiful picture with the tail lights and then no lights in front of us. I'm not sure I like where you're going with this, John, but I hope we're not flying blind. But the thing about this that is so important is, yes, Linux is the space where today the vast majority of the innovation happens. Yeah, if you like really shiny things that do exactly 3 things really awesome, Apple might be your thing. If you like to not know how to get that stupid thing off your desk, then maybe Windows 8 is something you should try. But most everything that is innovative, whether it's the buffer bloat research, the multipath, TCP, IP stuff, a lot of extreme multiprocessing, extreme big data processing, most everything that is about big data processing, from all the Hadoop and the MapReduce and all this happens in open source. All this happens in and around open source technologies. And I spoke to a group of device makers recently who were asking for advice on their OS choice, on their plans, on how they wanted to, what OS they wanted to run on the next generation innovative devices. And they had a couple of ideas, develop their own, buy an RTOS and all this. And it's really trivial to walk people through the 10 logical steps why none of that makes any sense. There is absolutely no way that you can compete with a community that has 1,300 different developers provide 12,000 different change sets in the last 60 days. No one can compete with this. No company has the resources. And regardless how many people you hire, and regardless how well you hide them away in a UFO-shaped future headquarters, there will always be more people and smarter people outside than inside of your company. And that is something that I think is key to why we are so invested and so engaged in open source. Because open source equals innovation. And promoting that and engaging in that, and much more importantly, participating in that is what's so critical to us. Now, when Matt Jones from Jaguar talked this morning about his desire to see people innovate on this platform, he said something that struck really with me when he said, I don't care if this is just on a Jaguar. Well, maybe I like if it's here first, but fundamentally it doesn't matter. I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry, Matt. But that very much reflects our own view on this. For us, if we do really great code that then ends up being used on an ARM-based Android phone, that's fine, that's awesome. We like to see the innovation. We like to see new things being done with processors, with compute, with the resources that are out there, with the capabilities that are out there. So to us, that is progress. That is what we want to support. But we don't only want to support this. We want to be involved to help guide, shape, inform the direction this is going. And at the same time, we want to learn from this. Because as you are part of the group of people developing the future, you will learn a lot of things of what you need or what we need to put in the next generation of CPUs and chipsets and platforms. So to us, this involvement is incredibly valuable. Intel has been involved in software for a very long time. Long before I joined, I've been with Intel for 11.5 years. Intel has been an active contributor to a lot of software projects, but the way closed source or proprietary software development goes, of course, no one sees that. It just happens behind closed doors. This has become much more obvious with open source, much more obvious in Linux, where charts like the one that John showed are on the projector. But we have always had this idea that we wanted to be what we called the platform of choice. Basically, whatever someone wants to do with a computer, we hope, or we want to work on being the best platform that they can do it on. And in the past, this worked more on a corporate level, working with Microsoft and Oracle and SAP and all those companies. And today, this is much more engaging with the projects, helping them run better on our platform, run faster, run more efficient. And in a way, over these past 10 years, there has been a quite dramatic shift inside Intel of doing a lot more in software. So when I joined Intel in 2001, it was a pretty strong software team there. Today, Intel Software is actually the 10th largest software vendor in the world by number of employees, not by revenue, but by number of employees working in software. And that, to me, is something that shows how important software is to us. And unfortunately, I can't disclose any numbers on this, but let's just say quite a few of these people work on open source. The idea of a hardware vendor being, as I just learned, the #1 contributor to the latest kernel is kind of funny. And it may sound like, oh, they are dominating, they are bad. Well, A, if you look at the total contribution, it's still just 10%. It's not that much. And B, it's very, very hard to dominate any group or organization that is run by Linus Torvalds. If you've met the guy or been on email with him lately, not going to happen. But one of the things that happens with this amount of involvement, with the degree of how we are considered part of the community, is that strangely the expectations for how we behave and what we do go up. One of the key kernel maintainers sent me an email Saturday morning, well, it was Saturday afternoon for him in Europe, that started with my 3 favorite letters. They stand for the World Taekwondo Federation. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Okay, thank you. And commenting about a patch that one of my coworkers had submitted to him a little earlier, and complaining about all kinds of very understandable and justified things that were wrong with the patch. And to me, I mean, yeah, ruining my weekend on a Saturday morning, maybe not my favorite thing. And the poor person, of course, then got email from me, which probably wasn't his favorite thing. But to me, this is actually a sign of success. Because most every company that ever contributed to Linux has submitted really bad patches. And if you think your company hasn't, yeah, you're wrong. But the fact that I immediately get an email saying, what's going on with you guys? I'm not expecting this from you. To me, that's a good sign. Because that means they expect more from us. They know we understand how this works. We understand how the reviews work. We understand how the code is supposed to work. And so this is success. This says, yes, we're doing the right thing. Now, Linux, the kernel, is clearly, you know, and this is the Linux Foundation we're here. It's very important. But if you look at the total lines of code, and if you look at the impact that it has in the economy, it's kind of just a small piece. The open source community has built not just one, but apparently 3, 4, 5 complete stacks, and we are continuously building more. I can't wait for the libc announcement, by the way. But the open source community has branched out in a lot of interesting areas. And so as a company that is trying to be very involved in this, it's actually kind of interesting to trying to keep up with all the things that happen, from OpenStack to Open Daylight to Open, I don't know, is there anything that isn't open yet? They're running out of names. It's really kind of boring. Oh, yes, yes. The next speaker pushing his project to make sure that I mention Gluster, yes. And Intel is very engaged in the far superior Lustre project, which addresses the same exact market. Thank you for the reminder to point that out. Sorry. I wasn't going to go there. And this has become so complicated that now a lot of meta projects start up. So we have things like the Yocto project, bringing together the tools to build a distribution. And so it's a project of projects. Dr. Su from Samsung this morning talked about Tizen, which is a project to create a family of operating systems for different markets, like IVI, so infotainment in cars, like phones or tablets or PCs or whatnot. I mean, the complexity of this field has gone up quite dramatically, and it's very, very hard to keep track of all these initiatives and to really be actively involved and successful and to understand what is going on in these projects. And to me, this is one of those fun challenges. I'm Intel's Chief Linux and Open Source Technologist, and again, let this acronym kind of settle in for a moment, the Linux and Open Source Technologist, the Chief Lost, because I very much feel often lost in just how much is going on out there and how it's absolutely impossible to follow all the directions in which open source takes you. Yet at the same time, I'm supposed to help guide Intel in what we do, where we go, how we are engaged, and where we invest and where we spend a lot of our effort. And so one of the topics that I have been interested in over the last couple of years is this idea of the open web platform and of web applications actually as an equivalent to local applications on your device, on your computer. So if you look at the way the web is perceived today, a lot of people use it predominantly just to browse for information. Anybody heard of this thing, Facebook, I think? Yeah, exactly. Anybody on Facebook here? Oh, come on. Is this a Google Plus crowd? Yeah, it's funny because my wife keeps saying to me, oh, such and such one of our friends posted on Facebook, because she needs to remind me to actually log in and check, because most of the stuff I read is on Google Plus. But the web is very much what a lot of people equate to an information source. And the web as a platform, how to develop, or on which to develop applications, is something that I don't think a lot of people really have understood or conceptualized. And to me, it's kind of interesting, because the web is the one thing that really binds together the majority of the client-facing compute devices, whether it's your phone or soon your watch, I guess, or then the glasses and then the implant, or your PC or your little supercomputer that you have under your desk. All of these, what they have in common tends to be an ability to display, interact with web pages. And if you're able to take these technologies and turn them into a platform that you can target with applications, that is actually a very, very interesting way to deal with some of this diversity. It doesn't matter as much if this is do I get this right? Unity running on Mir, running on Ubuntu libc, Upstart D, and the Ubuntu kernel, or whether you're using plain old Fedora or your Android phone or whatnot. And to us, this is one of those game changers. This is something that we think is, we being Intel, think is very, very important for the future of where we are going with client applications, with the way people interact with compute devices, their personal compute devices, I guess I should say. So today, the perception of the web is much more about information, about cat videos, a lot about cat videos. And sadly, news and other things. And a lot of people don't think of the web as a way to get an application. Yet if you go to any of the two, I guess, large app stores out there, if you go to Google Play or to iTunes, and you actually look at the applications, you will see that a ton of them, I would guess a majority of them, are thin layers of glue around some web service. And one of my favorite features is, if I've browsed from my phone, and about half the websites, when you go to them, say, oh, would you like to download our app that gives you the same information in a much more inconvenient format? No. Yet apparently most people use these apps. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be written. So there is this native application that actually just provides you with web content. But that's only half of the equation, because what I want is I really want a platform on which you can develop applications like you do today. So that means it needs to be a similar experience, or superior experience, I hope, for the developer, with strong tools, with debugging, with testing, with a tool set that allows you to work not in a web browser with your editor in the background and reloading your web page, but actually having a development environment for web applications. It needs to be an application-like experience for the end user. And that means if you are, whether you're on a PC or on a phone or in your brain implant, you're able to control what runs on your computer, how it runs there, how it is installed, and what it installs for you. Security, of course, is a huge topic for this, because whenever you click on some link on the internet, the first question you ask yourself is, oh, where is that going to take me? And is that a site I really want to be on? And is it a site that I want my company's web tracking software to see that I've been on? It's a wonderful world out there. And with the addition of internationalization in domain names, it has gotten even better, because you can play fun games with these things. But I digress. So the other issue that I have with where we are with the web today is again one of partly perception, partly reality. And that is, to a lot of people, web applications, so JavaScript, HTML things, Google Docs, whatever you want wherever you want to go with this, they have this reputation for being slow, often clumsy, and certainly online only. So this is, if you look at the criticism on things like Chrome OS, if you think about the comments that Mr. Zuckerberg made a while back about their Facebook application that they tried to write in HTML. There is this reputation of this web platform as being kind of a second-class citizen. Yeah, you can do this, but it doesn't really work all that well. And if you really want this to be fast, you need to go native. And so this is one of those ideas where I say, we need to tackle this. We need to find a way to change this perception and get to the point where power and performance are important, and where web applications truly feel like native applications. So partly this is, of course, a tools question. I mentioned that before, and we are very engaged on web tools and on creating an infrastructure that makes it easier to address this. But partly this is also a historic problem, because if you look back at the first attempts that people made to write web applications, and again, I said Google Docs or I mean, the Facebook web page is an application for all I care. But they are all designed around one scarce resource, and that scarce resource is networking bandwidth. They always assume that the thing they have the least of is network capacity, throughput, high latency, whatnot, and everything else is hidden in that noise. Once you turn this into a local application, networking latency, I hope that your loopback interface is reasonably fast. That's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is compute, so power and performance. And I always say these two things together because they are the same thing. Unless you're really, really at an extreme edge of this equation, whatever you do to improve performance, if you do it right, reduces power. For a given set of work, if you make it run more efficiently, it will get faster and it will take less energy to do so. So shifting the focus of this developer community from, oh, network is my problem, they need to do all these things around getting faster network throughput or dealing with issues in network throughput, and shifting the mindset to saying, oh, I'm actually writing an application, and applications need to be power and performance aware. They shouldn't wake up every 10 milliseconds and say, anything here, anything here, because that makes it really hard for your platform to go to sleep. And that's one of my favorite features of if you see software that has this loop that says, oh, anything happen? Anything happen? It's like the Gophers, anyway. Yeah. The other thing that is hard in this context of web applications is that the standardization of access to platform features is very, very early on. It's in its infancy. We have a bunch of proprietary interfaces to certain platform features, usually driven by the two big phone platforms, so Android and iOS. And proprietary doesn't mean non-open source, but it means non-standardized. So they are just invented by someone without much thought for how could this be generalized, how can this be broadly useful. And so one of our big initiatives in this space is to work with the W3C on creating standards to get access to platform features, things like camera, video, audio, Bluetooth, NFC, your networking stack, all these features that your platform gives you that traditionally are kind of hard to get to from JavaScript and HTML. So for us, the idea of having a web platform that really can compete with a local application is something that we have been focusing on for a while. We have heavily invested in contributing to the core projects in this area and to improve the key infrastructure pieces that all of the different approaches to web applications have in common. We want to shift the idea of developers from, oh, if I write an application, do I use Qt or do I use Python? We want to shift this idea to, or do I write a web application? We want to make sure that the libraries, the toolkits, the infrastructure that is available for them is very much similar to what they can do with a native application today. And I think we're making pretty good progress on this road. The key challenge, I think, will be to come back in a year and show applications that you can install on 5 different devices, and they run as native applications on those 5 different devices. They behave the same in a resolution-independent fashion, and they interact with you in a device-appropriate way, whether it's touch or eye tracking, Google Glasses. Anybody can get me some Google Glasses? Or your keyboard or mouse or whatever you have. And that, to me, is going to be the measure of success and how well we are able to take what we call the open web platform into a successful platform that people can develop software on. Thank you.